On this Monday night, boldly going where no one has gone before. The Artemis II crew's journey into the record books.
Today, for all humanity, you're pushing beyond that frontier.
The highlights from a historic day in deep space and why the astronauts are taking their own avatars for the ride. The U.S. president's ultimatum to Iran: open the Strait of Hormuz or else.
The entire country can be taken out in one night.
How Tehran is responding as another Iranian leader is assassinated. Soaring costs, how Canadian airlines are reacting to sky-high fuel prices. Plus, hoop dreams.
Very grateful, thankful to be here.
An event for the next generation of Canadian basketball stars that could be a game changer.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with breaking news that is truly out of this world. The Artemis II crew has now traveled farther from Earth than anyone in human history, surpassing the record set way back in 1970. And tonight, the 4 astronauts, including Canadian Jeremy Hansen, completed the most critical phase of their mission, passing behind the far side of the moon for the first time. Take a look at this. The Orion spacecraft, the moon, and the Earth converging just before the Artemis II crew swung around the moon, getting a glimpse of parts of the lunar surface never seen before. There was then a total communication blackout that lasted about 40 minutes before the astronauts emerged and called home.
Houston, we have you the same, and it is so great to hear from Earth again. To Asia, Africa, and Oceania, we are looking back at you. We hear you can look up and see the moon right now. We see you too.
Our Eric Sorensen has all the highlights from a historic day in deep space.
It is blowing my mind what you can see with the naked eye on the moon right now.
The gravitational grip of the moon has taken over from Earth as the primary force guiding Artemis II. The crew dimmed the cabin lights to witness history, the closest approach to the moon in more than 50 years, and the greatest distance from Earth by humans ever. The 4 farthest emissaries in outer space include a Canadian, Jeremy Hansen.
As we surpass the furthest distance humans have ever traveled from planet Earth, we do so in honoring the extraordinary efforts and feats of our predecessors in human space exploration.
In 1970, Apollo 13, the aborted moon landing mission, traveled 400,000 kilometers from Earth to slingshot around the moon to get back. Today, the new record by Artemis II, more than 406,000 kilometers from Earth, some 6,600 kilometers further. The record comes during the 40-minute blackout when Artemis II is on the far side of the moon. This period also marks the closest approach by Artemis to the moon, 6,550 kilometers from the surface. At that point, to the astronauts, the moon looks about like this, like holding a basketball. Amazing.
Today, for all humanity, you're pushing beyond that frontier.
That's Canadian backup crew member astronaut Jenny Gibbons in Mission Control. In an extraordinary moment, the astronauts spotted 2 new craters and decided one should be named Carol for the late wife of the commander, Reid Wiseman. You can hear Hansen choking up.
We will be able to see this from Earth. It's a bright spot on the moon. And we would like to call it Carol.
Moments later, Wiseman hugs Hansen, and all the astronauts come together for a tear-filled embrace.
Integrity and Carol Crater. Loud and clear. Thank you.
They're doing everyday things on board, like Hansen having a shave, but the Artemis crew is blazing a trail for humans to walk on the moon once more.
I think it shows something about the value of human spaceflight. There's a lot we still have to learn about the moon, whether there's mineral deposits there, the water that we think exists in the craters near the South Pole.
This evening, the crew was in a communications blackout on the far side of the moon.
Integrity, we have you loud and clear.
But the astronauts are back in contact now and will prepare soon to head back to Earth.
Houston, we have you the same, and it is so great to hear from Earth again.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
While all eyes are on the moon, NASA scientists are also monitoring the effects of deep space travel on the human body. Previous missions have revealed clues of what the astronauts can expect, including severe space motion sickness. In the absence of gravity, astronauts will also lose muscle mass and bone density, so exercise during the mission becomes particularly important. And retired Canadian astronaut Dave Williams says crew members can also expect to grow taller.
we have an S-shaped curve in our back. That straightens out if you don't have gravity. I think Jeremy's normally 6'2". I'd be willing to bet he's going to be 6'4" in space. The problem is if you come back to Earth, they compress down to where they were before. And we've actually had astronauts have challenges with that after landing.
For Artemis II, NASA has developed a novel way of measuring the impact of space on the human body. Each astronaut is traveling with what NASA is calling living hitchhikers, the astronauts' own cells stored in microchips. Heidi Petracek explains what they're hoping to learn.
It is the most striking feature of the
As Orion's crew hurtles around the moon, cells from the astronauts' own bodies living inside what looks like a microchip are taking the trip with them in an experiment NASA calls Avatar.
What it is you can see inside there are these tiny channels.
Before takeoff, the Artemis II astronauts donated platelets, which was then used to create bone marrow tissue. That tissue was loaded onto organ chips, about the size of a USB thumb drive, kept alive by fluid running inside. Each crew member has their own pair, one still on Earth, the other flying through space on Orion in high-tech containers.
They control the temperature and carbon dioxide, oxygen levels, and so forth.
Dr. John Ingber pioneered the very first organ chips, meant to test medications on human cells outside the body and personalize cancer treatments. He now leads the team sending chips to space on this moon mission.
My team is down there. They basically got the chips ready to go on launch, and now they're going to take them when they come back. And they were able to see the actual liftoff, and they were exuberant.
Scientists used bone marrow because it's sensitive to the potential effects of both space radiation from solar flares and exposure to microgravity.
We're also studying types of cells that haven't been well studied in the past.
But why send organ chips to space when scientists could just run tests on the astronauts themselves? Well, part of the answer, to make sure it works so they can do it again.
There is the potential to do much larger numbers of chips in the future, where now you could be testing, women, men, young, old.
You could also send them farther, maybe even to Mars.
The science has so much incredible capability on Earth or in space.
Small chips with big potential in space and on Earth. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Turning now to the war in Iran. The U.S. president is doubling down on his threat tonight. Donald Trump says he will blow everything up if Iran doesn't make a deal by 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the key shipping route for oil and gas. Trump claims that peace talks are underway, but Iran has rejected the latest ceasefire proposal. Jackson Proskow now on the last-ditch, high-stakes negotiations.
With the clock ticking toward the president's Tuesday deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, Donald Trump is re-upping his threats against Iran.
The entire country could be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night.
But Iran seems uninterested in peace on Trump's terms, issuing its own 10-point plan that rejects a temporary ceasefire and demands a permanent end to the fighting. Trump called that significant, but not good enough.
We'll see what happens. I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly warned Trump not to agree to a ceasefire at this stage of the war. The Americans seem confident they should keep on fighting.
We won, okay? They are militarily defeated.
Despite the growing global energy crisis and Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz, Trump has been buoyed by the successful rescue of 2 American pilots from inside Iran over the weekend, a complex military operation that involved dozens of aircraft to recover an injured weapons officer who was hiding on a mountainside.
Our intelligence reflects that the Iranians were embarrassed and ultimately humiliated by the success of this audacious rescue mission.
Should peace talks fail, Trump insists the Iranian people want him to keep bombing their country, even if that means targeting bridges and power plants.
They would be willing to suffer that in order to have freedom.
That suffering would all but certainly extend to Iran's Gulf neighbors and worldwide energy and food stocks. It's a price Trump insists he's willing to pay to permanently disable the Iranian regime. Trump maintains he does not know what will happen on Tuesday and that he has not yet made up his mind. But he argues the price of not complying with his demands should be enough to make Iran think twice. Jeff?
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. The United Nations nuclear watchdog says strikes on Iran have hit close to the country's only functioning nuclear power plant. The International Atomic Energy Agency says attacks pose a very real danger to nuclear safety and must stop. The Bushehr plant uses low-enriched uranium from Russia to supply Iran's grid with about 1,000 megawatts of power. Iran says it's been targeted 4 times since the war began. Israel says it's responsible for killing more senior Iranian officials, including an intelligence chief. Israel also admitted to hitting a key facility in Iran's natural gas field. The war is disrupting the lives of many millions of people right across the Middle East. Redmond Shannon reports.
A rescue operation in the Iranian city of Qom. It's unclear who or what the rescuers recovered, but Iranian media say the airstrike killed at least 5 people in the residential building. Israeli strikes on Tehran overnight also killed the head of intelligence for Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the latest Iranian leader assassinated. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his forces successfully struck Iran's huge South Pars natural gas complex too, the second attack of the war on the strategic site. However, Israel's military has admitted this airstrike in Lebanon killed the wrong people, Pierre Mouawad and his wife. He was a Christian politician with a party that strongly opposes Hezbollah and its militant activities against Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces released this video Monday of it destroying buildings in a southern Lebanon village, part of its invasion operation targeting Iran-backed Hezbollah. This burial of another victim in Lebanon is considered to be a temporary burial, according to a local mayor, at least until Israel leaves the country, something Israel says will only happen when the Hezbollah threat is removed. Across the border in northern Israel, teams recover the bodies of 4 victims of an Iranian strike that hit an apartment building. Israeli media outlets say those killed were all relatives, the Gershkovitz family. This neighbor helped save another man trapped under a collapsed wall.
It took about 3 to 4 long minutes. It's a long time when you are buried beneath a wall. 3 to 4 minutes. We managed to pull him out. He was very injured.
The Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen say they launched a joint operation with Iran and Hezbollah against Israel today. Some drones were intercepted over southern Israel and no injuries or damage was reported. Jeff?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Red. Longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon has won a legal battle that could see his criminal conviction dismissed. At the request of the Department of Justice, the U.S. Supreme Court threw out previous lower court rulings that upheld Bannon's conviction. Bannon was found guilty of contempt of Congress in 2022 after he refused to testify as part of the investigation into the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Bannon subsequently served 4 months in prison. His case now goes to a lower district court where it's likely to be dismissed. Savannah Guthrie returned to the anchor desk on NBC's Today Show for the first time since the apparent abduction of her mother, Nancy.
Well, here we go, ready or not. Let's do the news.
Yes, so good to have you back.
Guthrie wore a yellow dress to honor her mother, matching the yellow flowers and ribbons placed around her Arizona neighborhood. Authorities believe the 84-year-old was taken against her will nearly 2 months ago. The Guthrie family has offered a $1 million reward for any information leading to her recovery. The cost of flying is taking off. Coming up, how Canadian airlines are reacting as jet fuel prices soar. In Fiji, salvage crews are working to prevent an oil spill after a cruise ship ran aground. The ship got stuck on a reef near Monariki Island on Saturday off the northwest coast of Fiji's biggest island. All 30 passengers disembarked safely. Some of the crews stayed aboard to help as the vessel is still grounded. Monariki is where the 2000 movie Castaway, starring Tom Hanks and Wilson the volleyball, was filmed. Here in Canada, ship trouble of a different kind. BC Ferries, which provides passenger and ferry service in BC, is having a choppy Easter weekend. Several sailings between Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Island, and the Sunshine Coast were cancelled ahead of time because of mechanical issues. One vessel had to be pulled from service yesterday. Easter is the 4th busiest long weekend of the year for the ferry provider. Further disruptions are expected tonight as strong winds move into the region. Air Canada and WestJet will begin implementing a new fuel surcharge this week on some flights. Airfares have risen steadily over the last 5 weeks as the airline industry deals with the skyrocketing cost of jet fuel from the war on Iran. And analysts warn that flights to parts of Europe and Asia could soon be canceled entirely. Heather Yerkes-West explains.
We're on a bike and barge tour in the Netherlands, and so we had to pay a surcharge for that now, fuel surcharge.
The price of travel is on the rise as the war in the Middle East continues to make oil prices soar. Airfares already surging in the last 5 weeks, set for another bump as Canadian carriers Air Canada and WestJet announce new fuel surcharges taking effect this week. Getting unaffordable?
It's getting there.
Definitely, they have been increasing. Some of the airlines are starting to put in their fuel surcharges. They're putting it in up front, like $50 fuel surcharges, and some we're just seeing increases. They're just putting them into the ticket prices.
Both Air Canada and WestJet say there could be further price adjustments to come as Canadians enter the high-demand spring and summer travel season. It's why travel experts recommend those wanting to fly buy their tickets now.
I booked this flight with miles, but some of my trips later in the year, not sure if it's going to happen.
Yeah, the prices have gone up.
Oh yeah, like 30% or something.
The impact of the war could soon go beyond airfare price hikes, with some industry watchers warning that it could become difficult, if not impossible, to access flights to some Asian destinations if the situation in the Middle East does not improve within the next week or two.
In those parts of the world, in Southeast Asia, that have no fuel, no aviation fuel. And at that point in time, services, airports are shut down. People are laid off, airplanes are parked until the pipeline reestablishes itself.
There is no threat of a jet fuel shortage within Canada since it is both produced and refined locally. But as a global commodity, that doesn't save Canadian carriers or their customers from price shocks, predicted to make travel even more expensive in the weeks ahead. Heather Yerkes-West, Global News, Calgary.
Somber anniversary still ahead. How the Humboldt Broncos are remembering those lost 8 years after the crash. Today marks 8 years since the deadly Humboldt Broncos crash. 16 people were killed and 13 others injured when a semi-truck slammed into the youth hockey team's bus. It happened on a highway in rural Saskatchewan after the driver went through a stop sign. Following the collision, new mandatory entry-level training was introduced for commercial truck drivers. But there are calls for more to be done. Scott Thomas, who lost his son Evan in that crash, says there are still questions that need to be answered. He's calling for a coroner's inquest.
I just think there's issues that haven't been properly addressed by all three areas: education, employers, and oversight, which is the government. They're all still dropping the ball.
At the site of the tragic crash, work is progressing on a permanent memorial. The Humboldt Broncos Memorial Committee says asphalt work for a parking lot and pathways is set to begin this year. The new focus will be building a monument to honor those who lost their lives. Cream of the crop up next. Why Canada's top young basketball talent is taking their shot. Welcome back. More and more often these days, Canadians' hoop dreams are becoming a reality. Canada is now the most represented country in the NBA outside of the U.S. Ontario's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the league's best players, and there's plenty more Canadian talent in the pipeline, which was showcased this weekend at the All-Canadian Games. Rod Black reports.
Next wave, next up, the next faces of Canada basketball. The country's top high school players, ultra-talented teenagers, brought together at this hoops hotbed in Orangeville, Ontario for the annual springtime showcase, the All-Canadian Games.
We've got kids playing from most of the provinces in Canada, and they've taken the game on the men's and women's side to different levels.
The All-Canadian Games is on. Basketball in Canada has seen the rise and is still rising. This invitation-only event, now in its 11th year, has been a breeding ground for this boom. NBA champions Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luguentz Dort, and Jamal Murray have all played here before. So have WNBA players like Aaliyah Edwards. These next-gen newbies would love to follow in their sneaker steps.
I feel like seeing them here and then me being here feels like I could get there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Inspires me a lot.
I think it 100% is a goal down the road, and I think I'm gonna strive for it and really hope that I can end up in the W.
Before the bright lights and the bigger stages, this is the biggest game that most of these players will have ever played in. This is their shining moment. It's not about showing up. It's about taking off.
This is the launching pad for their brands, for their professionalism, for the next stage of their basketball journey. And
very grateful, thankful to be here. This is big for me, just being able to showcase my talent in front of everyone.
I just want to show that back in the East Coast, we play a tough game of basketball, and Ontario is known for it, but I want to put Newfoundland on the map.
Put it up, a buzzer beater! Kylie Suey, that one is for Newfoundland and Labrador. These players will now go their separate ways, some to big schools down south, some may even turn pro. The next chapter in their stories will be written by hard work, determination, and maybe even a little luck. And who knows, if the basketball bounces their way, there is a good chance that they might just be Canada's next ones. For Global News, Rod Black, Orangeville, Ontario, at the All-Canadian Games.
And that is Global National for this Monday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Whitestone Lake in Ontario. We love seeing your Canada, so please email your pictures to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night.